Welcome back to Southern Michigan. My name's Adrienne, and we're about to walk through my garden for the fourth summer garden tour of the 2022 growing season. We're coming into July, and that's about the time my garden starts to look a little jungly, and I love it. I haven't seen any monarch caterpillars yet on my milkweed. I'll have to look into my notes from last year. I don't remember when they come around. My dahlias are starting to bloom. Well, not bloom. I've got a few buds getting ready to bloom. My zinnias and onions are doing really good out here. A lot of my onions are starting to bulb. And this is the first year that I'm growing onions successfully. I had just a handful of onions last year, and these are doing really great. I finally got cardboard down on this section. I've been planning on doing this since early spring and ended up running out of cardboard and then running out of time. But since I have drip irrigation here, Dennis wasn't able to mow this section of the grass, and it was getting really tall and impeding the fence quite a bit. My zinnias out here are starting to open. I sowed some chives here in this corner, and they're not coming up yet. And I also sowed some chives in a pot, and they aren't coming up either, so I'm going to order some more seeds. The bean trellis is looking amazing. They fill the space they are given so well, and it's just becoming a stunning entrance to the garden, and I'm just so happy that I decided to do that. These calendula that I put in front of the beans on both sides, they're still really small. They're struggling to get going, and I am thinking about just pulling them out and putting some lettuce in its place, because with the beans creating a lot of shade there, the lettuce should do okay. Everything's looking kind of sad. I mean, the flower blooms are looking a little bit sad because I wasn't able to get out here and prune everything yesterday because of all the rain. All of these onions that I planted out of that fabric pot, some of them are starting to take off, but some of them are really struggling. And I think I just had them in that pot way too long. Brussels sprouts are doing really good. I'm noticing a little bit of leaf damage, and although I have them under this netting, it's not 100% protection. So I'll be spraying those with BT when I get it going for the cabbage. This is a carrot that overwintered, and now it's blooming, and it's just beautiful. So if you've ever wondered what a carrot looks like when it flowers, there it is. My bonus volunteer sunflowers reaching tall. And the Kennebec potatoes are hanging on, starting to yellow a lot more. Once potatoes flower, you can start harvesting them as new potatoes. They'll be very small. The plants will start to fall over and die back. Once the plants do that, the potatoes are as big as they're going to get. You can harvest them for storage. Here's some of the white onions bulbing. My strawberry patch is hanging out getting ready to make some more strawberries for a second harvest. Here's a cilantro that is going to seed and flowering. And cilantro, when it goes to seed, is just coriander. And you can save those seeds for culinary uses or to plant more cilantro. My ground cherries are doing great. I mean, they don't look super great, but that's pretty typical of ground cherries in my garden. I get a lot of pest pressure on these plants, but not so devastating that I don't get fruit. I do dust periodically with diatomaceous earth, but I don't go overboard. As long as the plants are producing, I'm fine with whatever's happening. Echinacea is budding. It's going to be so pretty. I've got 6 plants of Echinacea here, and next year I hope it'll just fill the space in completely. This blue curly Scotch kale is doing phenomenal, and I've been talking about just feeding it to the chickens, but honestly it's been pretty good, so we've been munching on it ourselves. My purple sage is becoming a tasty treat for the slugs as well, so I'll definitely be pulling my basil out because I know that they will just be relentless with that. I'm not sure how they will react to the sage. I'm hoping just some sluggo will take care of it. The calendula is blooming all over the garden. It is just beautiful. And the peppers are starting to flower. These are 2 little rows of sweet peppers. This patch of peas has been giving us some delicious little garden snacks. And the peas are not super sweet right now because it's warm. They're not as starchy as I expected they would be. They are edible. It's just hard because you know that they could be so much sweeter in the cool weather. I'll be planting a lot more peas for fall. And speaking of fall, it's time to start thinking about what we are going to be growing in the next season, which is coming up this week. We will be planting fall. The chamomile is starting to bloom. And this little patch of sugar magnolia tendril peas has seen better days. It's really starting to show signs of stress from all the heat we've been having, and I'm going to be pulling those out really soon. These teddy bear sunflowers are doing well. They're starting to get their flower buds. But I've got a little patch of cucamelons back here, and I'm hoping once I pull these peas they'll still be getting enough sun, but it's pretty shady. I've got some mammoth sunflowers on the other side of this gate, and then with these teddy bear sunflowers, we'll see how they do. I was anticipating that possibly being an issue, so I put some cucamelon here on this end of the gate as well, and between the 3 plants this gate should fill with cucamelons. This is some holy basil in front of the cucamelons, and just some strawberries. I have got ever-bearing strawberries all down the way here, and it continues on underneath the bike. I've harvested everything for its first production of fruit. Ever-bearing strawberries, I think they produce twice a year. Down here in this happy little mess of plants, I have a Rudbeckia that is getting ready to bloom. This is a sweetheart cherry tomato, and this little basket is full of wild thyme and this cute little plant that I found at the greenhouse. I'm not sure what it's called, but it has these cute little pink flowers, and I just deadheaded it this week, so I'm hoping those blooms will come back. Behind the bike is an early girl tomato. Girl, you gotta fight for your son. I thought you'd be taller than that by now. Those Chinese red noodle beans are starting to climb. This Alaskan salmon nasturtium is looking as lovely as ever. I love this plant so much. And the purple ball basil back here is just stunning. I love that color. This is a little strawberry runner that was in the middle of one of the garden walkways, and it was just this tiny little thing. I pulled it out of the ground, plopped it into this basket, and now it's really thriving and already shooting a runner out. That's how I acquired this charming little patch of strawberries. I had 2 plants last year in this basket where this nasturtium is, and it dropped enough runners that it gave us another patch of strawberries here. So cute. Garlic is doing really great. I'm expecting to harvest this week, and that brings me to the next topic of fall garden planning. I need to think about what I'm going to put in this bed and also in that Kennebec potato row. That's going to be open soon. And if I end up pulling any of those struggling tiny little onions out of that first bed, I'll have some room in there also. This trellis is full of 8 paste tomatoes. I have 4 Italian paste. It's an Oxheart style paste tomato. I've never grown the Italian paste. I have 4 Cordobu on this trellis as well. I did grow those last year and they were phenomenal. Very prolific, very large Oxheart paste tomatoes. Here's another chamomile plant, a little opal basil that the slugs have not found yet. This is a patty pan squash. I think I'm getting to the end of this chaotic mess of peas and their pea production. I harvested a good amount of peas off of this yesterday. Looks like there's a fair amount on here today. I don't see any new blossoms, so I'm probably going to be pulling this very soon. That little patch of basil is faring better than most, but still has some munching going on. This is a Dr. Weik's tomato, and I've intentionally let it kind of go. I'm not going to completely neglect it. I will prune it a little bit. I'll tie it up, but I'm not going to be excessive with the pruning. I'm going to let it just kind of be itself because I have the space here. It's the only tomato plant in this section, and it has room to go a little bit wild. These are 2 eggplants, a ping tongue and a black beauty, and this is pretty typical of what my eggplants look like. They are usually full of flea beetles. There's not a lot of beetles on there. I've been dusting with diatomaceous earth to keep them under control a little bit. Here's another ground cherry next to this mystery pepper. I had mislabeled it as a seedling. I thought it was an eggplant, and it's not an eggplant. This is a sun gold cherry tomato setting fruit, and next to it is a Blueberries Cherry tomato plant. It's got some fruit set too. These are a really unusual plant. It's a red cherry tomato with purple shoulders. The onions in this bed are doing really great. And my 4 tomatillo plants are doing really good as well. The jazzy zinnias have started blooming all over the garden, and they are precious. It's a mini zinnia. Here's a strawberry blonde calendula. I just love that color. 2 silverleaf sunflowers, some double-click snow cosmos starting to bloom, a lot of buds coming on. My row of calendula is growing, looking great. And here's another patch of those jazzy zinnias. My Armenian long cucumbers are needing redirecting. Daily. Sometimes they just need to be reminded where they need to climb, and they are really doing great. I've got some cucumber babies. And that leaf broke or got munched or something. We had a pretty heavy rain yesterday, so it could have been from the weather. This is a green finger cucumber. I've got 2 of those plants here. And it's setting fruit. Got a Yeti nasturtium. The summer squash are starting to bloom. This is a patty pan variety. Celery is looking great. I sowed a bunch of celery on both sides of the path, and I'm not seeing any germination. I'm going to start some inside and transplant it out here for fall. This is a little line of burgundy okra coming on. The leeks have started growing a little bit faster than they were. These 2 squash plants are a cue ball zucchini variety called Desi, and I've heard that you can eat these as summer squash or store them for winter squash. Let them mature on the vine and then store them for winter squash. So I'm going to try that this year. This is a little patch of pro-cut sunflowers. Obviously those are a little more stunted because of the squash casting some shade, but they're doing good. I had a mole come through here that disrupted the seeds on this little section, but there are some coming up. They're just a little later than the others. They got a little jostled. Some holy basil, another one of those beautiful Alaskan salmon nasturtiums, this charming little patch of jazzy zinnias. I love those colors, and just, I don't know, they make me smile. This is some sage, white borage, and over here are 3 semi-determinate tomato plants called Thornburg's terracotta, and they are looking jungly and happy. All the tomatoes in my garden are setting blossoms. A lot have started setting fruit. Oh, there is the first one here. I was gonna say, I haven't seen any babies on these Thornburg's terracotta yet, but there's one. Here are some cosmos coming up behind the Armenian long cucumbers, and the snapdragons are all budding and coming along nicely. This one bloomed this week. How lovely. I had originally thought I'd be cutting these for bouquets, but I love them in the ground in my garden. I think I'm just going to leave them alone. Another Alaskan salmon nasturtium. And these are 3 Rondanese summer squash. Everything's looking a little waterlogged because of that rain we had yesterday. It was late in the evening. Got a little bit of slug damage on some of these zinnias, but not a big deal. And oh my gosh, the color that's going to be splashed throughout this space is just going to be fantastic. I'm not wishing my summer away, but I am really looking forward to everything in full bloom. Here is another one of those Yeti nasturtiums and a sweet little line of celery. My muncher cucumbers that I had to re-sow because they were eaten by something, they are coming on nicely. And this is another cucumber variety called Parisian pickling. These are 3 poblano peppers and some purple opal basil in front, and the slugs haven't found this either. These are sugar baby watermelons and 2 midget melons on the other side. A white borage, and this patch of silverleaf sunflowers is doing really great. These are Mammoth Sunflowers, and they're starting to form their buds. Oh, this makes me so sad. So I was getting ready to talk about my teddy bear sunflowers. I've got a patch of teddy bear sunflowers in a different area of the garden that have been completely demolished, almost completely demolished by slugs. And I thought, oh, I'm so glad that I planted a row of those back here because they're doing really great and they don't have any damage. Well, now I see that they do have damage. So slugs have found my teddy bear sunflowers, and I don't know if it's just because they're close to the ground and easy to get to. Out of all my sunflowers, only the teddy bear sunflowers are showing this level of damage. Parsley is not doing super great, but not doing super terrible either. I don't think it's getting a lot of sun here, but it is coming on. This is a winter squash variety called Honey Nut that will climb up this trellis. It's a miniature butternut. And here are a couple of White Knight Pro-Cut sunflowers, and the Chinese red noodle beans are finally starting to climb up the trellis. These are all Pro-Cut sunflowers. I have White Knight here, and some of those have started blooming. And then I have the plum variety here as well. This is a Moon and Stars watermelon, and it has this beautiful spotted pattern on its leaves. And the watermelon itself will have that same pattern. I lost a plant that I had here, and before it completely died, I sowed another one just in case I lost it, and I ended up losing it. This is a midget melon, really happy plant over there, and then another sugar baby watermelon that was sowed a little bit later than everybody else. I mean, not as late as this guy, but later than the more mature plants. This Yeti nasturtium is really blooming a lot. It's so pretty. And this little teepee trellis is full of winter squash. I have buttercup on this left side and delicata over there. I've just been redirecting it when I walk through, but it's doing really good climbing up this teepee trellis. And we've got our first flower and a little baby buttercup, so cute. These are some purple potted pole beans that I had sowed, and as they were coming up, a rabbit came in and ate all the leaves. So I lost a few plants. I ended up re-sowing the line, And now some of the original plants have produced new leaves and started growing, and then the new beans that I sowed are also coming up, so I just left everybody alone. My 2 potato beds are just doing their thing. I had some pest damage on some of these plants. For the most part, it was isolated to this end of both of these potato beds, and I just dusted it with some diatomaceous earth one night last week. I'm not going to get crazy over trying to mitigate this issue that's going on because it's not major. The plants are still doing well. They've flowered, and now I'm just waiting for them to die back so I can harvest everything. These are a German butterball variety, and I have this bed planted in a Ruth Stout method, and then this bed was planted the traditional way, where you bury the potatoes and hill them up as they grow. So I'm excited to see the difference in the harvest I get from these 2 beds. It's the exact same potato. They were planted at different times, but completely different growing methods. Behind me is a little line of those Sensation Mix Cosmos, and some dill is coming on. My container corner is really thriving. I've had to rearrange the pots a couple of times this week, and that's one thing that I love about growing in containers. I can control the soil that I'm using. I can control the environment that the plants are growing because I can move the pot wherever I want. As these tomatoes get bigger and bushier and start crowding out their neighbor, I can move the pots, which is what I did this week, just to make sure that everybody is getting good sun exposure and good airflow. These Lima beans that I'm growing in containers, I've got 2 containers of these, and they are just amazing. I've never been able to grow bush beans in my garden. In the past, I've tried growing bush beans. I've tried growing this variety exactly in the ground, and they have only gotten about a foot tall and completely riddled with pests. The beans were misshapen, and I ended up ripping them out every time I've tried to grow them. This is an orange mint, and I've got several tomatoes in here. Most of them are cherry tomato varieties because they tend to do better in containers, but I do have a couple of other larger tomato plants in here as well. This is a Lima bean, and look, I have baby beans, baby Lima beans. I love Lima beans. I don't know, I thought that everybody loved Lima beans, but I'm learning that that is not true. So let me know if you're a Lima bean lover. These are a couple pots of herbs. I've got thyme in this one, and the oregano is coming on nicely in there. I have 2 winter squash planted here in the ground. I probably am not going to get anything off of them. I only have about 100 days left in my growing season, my summer growing season, and winter squash need more than that. These are 3 winter squash plants that I planted in the ground. I've got 2 sugar pie pumpkins and 1 butternut happening here. This is a calendula with a couple of orange peppers, a black beauty eggplant, and I showed you how riddled with flea beetles my eggplants in the ground are, and this one looks fantastic growing in this container. I'm super excited about that, and I might start just planting my eggplants in containers from now on. Down there is a pot of dill. This is another cherry tomato. The basil is looking good in this pot, which is so surprising because I know there is a lot of slugs back here in in these containers, like around these containers, not in the containers necessarily, but down in between the containers and all those leaves. This is a Sapola tomato, which is a Roma style tomato, and I have some bunching onions planted in there with some parsley and obviously that basil there. This was a pot of chives that I sowed, and they're not coming up, so I'm going to get some new chive seeds. These are jalapeno peppers, and there's a lot of blossoms, and fruit is starting to set on those. My dwarf tomato plant is doing fantastic. Such a cute plant. And this sun gold tomato is really gone wild. I ended up putting a stake in the ground next to the pot to support this branch. It's doing great. Back here is a pot of spearmint and peppermint. And my green stalk is doing really good. Now that everything's growing in my green stalk, I'm reassessing how I'm going to plant this next year. The beans are doing so great that I'm thinking about filling the entire stalk with beans. I have this tier of dragon tongue bush beans, and I mean, look at how big those leaves are. They are just huge. These plants are doing so well. Super happy for the beans, not super happy for everything that is being crowded out by them. These dwarf tomatoes, they're doing okay, but they're not getting enough sun. The basil is getting munched there. But this row down here under my dragon tongue bush beans, I have hot peppers, and they're just not getting enough sun. This ball basil is getting leggy and really reaching for the sun. I just think that I need to plan better in how I plant this next year so that my plants thrive a little bit more. Maybe just fill the whole thing with beans. Can you imagine? It would just be covered in green leaves. That would be really cool. This is some wild thyme in this antique watering can. Some rosemary peeking out here. And this is that other container of Lima beans, just loaded with beans. So fantastic. This is a Blueberries Cherry tomato plant. And I'm just so impressed by the Wild Boar Farms varieties. They're so robust and healthy. This is some chocolate mint with viola planted in the center. I'm really surprised at how well my violas are still doing in this heat. This is Swiss chard, and I love Swiss chard. I never knew that I loved Swiss chard until now. This is the first time I've ever successfully grown it. And it's amazing. I've been putting it in my eggs. I'm really happy about discovering that I love Swiss chard. Here's a chamomile. This is just a regular zucchini plant, doing amazing in this fabric pot. And a Better Boy tomato, bunch of blossoms. On this little trellis, I have sweet peppers on both sides and 3 tomato plants coming up on the trellis. This is a super sweet cherry tomato, a pork chop, which is a Wild Boar Farms variety, an atomic grape, and then this stunning silverleaf sunflower. It's really branching and has a ton of flower buds forming. My 3 okra, pink okra, are doing well. These are some cosmos in the center, and this is my sad little patch of teddy bear sunflowers that the slugs have been enjoying. Oh, it makes me so sad. I'm gonna try to save them. This is some lemon basil and some hot peppers. This is a hot black medium pepper, some jalapenos in the center, and then a poblano back there, 2 poblanos back there. Here's some chamomile blooming. and 2 Cipolla tomatoes. This is aroma style, and it is setting some fruit. I've got some basil coming up here, and a mystery volunteer tomato, and I've got a Mammoth Sunflower starting here. This is a Yeti nasturtium and a ground cherry and some muncher cucumbers. I put some more onions back there. This is a line of dill coming on, and then some sweet peppers. My raspberries have not produced any raspberries, but it's looking so much better than it has in years past. So I'm pretty confident that it's on the mend and it's going to do great someday. I harvested a lot of sage, so this is recovering from that massive harvest that I did. Same with my oregano and my thyme. This is a Better Boy tomato, a ping tongue eggplant, a purple pepper, sweet pepper, some more calendula, chamomile. I've got some parsley back there. This is a cherry tomato. I think it's a sun gold. Some more thyme. These cute little basil plants. It's called Aristotle Basil. This is the same variety that I have in the green stalk that is going leggy right now underneath those beans. Chives are doing great. I have some basil here, but I'm sure the slugs will find it. It's sprouting. Some wild thyme. A Paul Robeson tomato here behind the green bean arch, entrance arch. This is a pork chop, another pork chop. That is a yellow slicer tomato. I love yellow tomatoes because they're lower acid, and I like that little fruity spin on the flavor. This one is either an Italian paste or a cortabou, just because of the shape of the tomatoes. Kind of thinking, I'm leaning towards it being an Italian paste. And this one threw me because it almost looks like a Sun Chocola, which is a saladette-sized tomato. I didn't grow any of those this year. I had them in my garden a few years ago. It could be a Sun Gold, but the length of the branching has me a little bit confused because typically Sun Golds are a little bit closer together than this. So we'll see. We'll see if that ends up just being a Sun Gold with some extra long fruit branches. I think this one is a mortgage lifter, just based on the roundness of the tomatoes. It could be a Better Boy now that I'm seeing the blossom structure, or like the fruiting branch structure. This could be a Better Boy. I know this is Blueberries Cherry. I mean, I can tell by the plant itself, but now it's setting fruit, and you can see, I don't know if you'll be able to see in the camera, but it's starting to get a little bit of the blue shoulders. This is a Sun Gold, and you can see how much closer the tomatoes are together than in that other plant. This is a cortabou. Actually, that's not a cortabou. This is an Italian paste. Just really getting loaded up with those fruits. And then these last 4 here are cortabous. I have some cilantro that flowered, and I've got a couple plants of cilantro that I let go to flower, and I'm just going to let them go to seed. You can eat the seeds, it's coriander, but I'm just going to plant them in the garden for fall to have some fall cilantro. This is another cortaboo, cute little baby tomato there. I'm not sure what this is. It could be a beefsteak variety. I did pick up some beefsteak varieties from the greenhouse. This is a Granny Cantrell, and you can tell just by that cute little tomato. It's a little bit lighter green than the others, and it has a little bit of fluting. This is definitely a slicer or a paste tomato. To be determined on this one. This is a better boy. This is the first time growing better boy for me. I've generally just grown mostly heirlooms up until this year. These three are jet stars, and this one's setting some fruit. So cute. Here's one way down here on the stem. I thought that was unusual. These jet stars are really stocky little plants, and they set blossoms early and really set blossoms and fruit early. Here's a triple crop with some fruit setting. Well, it's got a couple of tomatoes coming on and setting more up here. Thank you so much for stopping over this morning. I had so much fun walking through the garden with you. I'll be posting weekly garden tours throughout the growing season, and I look forward to sharing my garden with you.